Back when we discussed our favorite forgotten Toonami anime, we got various comments about other anime we didn't talk about that was still broadcast on Cartoon Network. However, some of those suggestions weren't actually on Toonami. They were on a different Cartoon Network block, being Adult Swim, the channel's late-night daily block for older audiences, which has basically evolved into the network's alternate form at this point. While Toonami eventually became an Adult Swim block in 2012, years after its Cartoon Network cancellation, before that, Adult Swim tried out a good deal of anime during the 2000s that were a bit too spicy for Toonami at the time. Sometimes on their own anime block on Saturday nights, other times just whenever they felt like it on weeknights. Shoutouts to Inuyasha at 5 a.m. However, between all the memories we have of staying up late to watch Cowboy Bebop, Bleach, or Fooly Cooly, there are those anime that just didn't last on the network. They tried out something obscure, and it either didn't take off, or it ran its course and was never spoken about again. So for this video, we want to look at the lesser discussed anime Adult Swim tried out before they obtained Toonami. So basically, any anime they showed during the 2000s is eligible. The term forgotten is in the eye of the beholder, so we're just basing it off of what we felt had a short run, or just doesn't seem to be notable in Adult Swim's history, though may have been popular outside the network. And joining me again is my co-host from the Toonami videos, Judgment Meter.
Because I used to stay up till 4 a.m. before I became an old lady. Now my bedtime's 10, and wind down time starts at 8.
And for another co-host, we also have AT from Software Agents HQ.
A lot of us might have forgotten these shows, but I'm glad MrTopTenList remembered to bring me along.
Now, get out of the pool for the top 10 forgotten Adult Swim anime. Number 10, Pilot Candidate. Pilot Candidate is the earliest anime to air on Adult Swim on this list, premiering on Adult Swim in late February 2002. It was among the first anime on the Adult Swim action block. Back when Adult Swim started in 2001, it was just a Sunday and Thursday night block with some Cartoon Network originals aimed at older audiences, like Space Ghost or Aqua Teen. But there was one outlier. Cowboy Bebop was testing the waters of more mature anime airing outside Toonami's brand at the time. When Adult Swim first stepped outside that Sunday and Thursday time slot in February 2002, they got a Saturday night block called Adult Swim Action, where they expanded the anime lineup to include anime new to the network and some of the more violent or suggestive Toonami anime, like Outlaw Star, Tenchi Muyo, or the Gundam series. Pilot Candidate was on that initial lineup for Adult Swim Action, and was probably the least remembered of the bunch. The series was about a teenager named Zero training to be a pilot of the mech suits called Goddesses. His reasoning for doing this is when he was a kid, his life was saved by a goddess pilot after his colony was attacked by the alien enemies called Victims, so now he wants to follow in those footsteps. He behaves like your standard excited anime protagonist and works at the school alongside the other teens chosen to eventually pilot these mechs and fight off the alien threat. If this sounds like a generic anime plot, it kinda is. I feel like if you said anime in the early 2000s, this fits the cliches. It's in space, there's robot suits, spunky protagonist, and there's a random cat girl on the squad.
Yeah, his partner's the cat girl, but she wears the hat. But he knocked the hat off, or someone else knocked the hat off, and then she was really embarrassed. She's like, oh no, now everyone's gonna see my ears, now I'm a cat girl and think I'm a freak. By the way, people, I've never actually seen this anime. I didn't know it existed. I've only read the manga, which is by a different name. So this actually blows my mind that it's an anime.
Yeah, Pilot Candidate's just the dubbed name.
I know, what the hell? This is Pilot Candidate? This is supposed to be Candidate for Goddess.
And the manga were released in English with the original name, so that might have made it even more confusing for marketing.
Those books are in my closet. Wow, blast from the past. Oh my goodness, I have to see this anime. That is crazy beans. I haven't thought about this in like 20 years. This is by the same person who made Dan Angel, Yukiro Sugisaki, right?
How'd you remember a manga more obscure than the references I make on this channel?
Because when I was in middle school, I was like super super into reading manga. And if you open my closet in my childhood bedroom right now, you would see hundreds of manga, maybe thousands. It's quite extensive. I'm such a dweebus, nerdo.
Being only 12 episodes, it felt like they introduced plenty of concepts for backstories and development, but didn't have time to wrap it all up, so you just have to act like they were all resolved off to the side of the protagonist. The manga itself was 25 chapters, so there was probably more story to be told, but the anime had to drop some of it when it had to end.
The problem is, it feels incomplete. It's like a 13 episode long part of a pilot. Now, I know the point of a TV show is that the show develops over time in series, but I feel like when you commit to a TV show, you should have more things developed from the very beginning, you know? On the flip side, the opening theme is great, some of the music stands out, and I think this is the first time I heard Michelle Ruff in an anime dub.
As mentioned, it premiered in late February 2002 when Adult Swim started their action block, and funny enough, it's the only one of that initial lineup with no longevity. Look at its schedule buddies: Cowboy Bebop, classic; Yu Yu Hakusho, later succeeded on Toonami; Mobile Suit Gundam 0083, can't go wrong with a Gundam series; Outlaw Star, already a Toonami hit; and Tenchi Muyo, now less restricted on Adult Swim. Pilot Candidate never reappeared in future lineups outside of a single rerun cycle right after it completed its run, so it never made it out of 2002.
This is one of the shows that was memorable simply because of how briefly it played. It's kind of like, first it's there, and now it's not.
It was also planned to be aired on Toonami rather than Adult Swim, so its dub had censorship built in, like getting rid of instances of violence and nudity. I'm not sure what made them move it over to Adult Swim in the end, but I'm interested to see how it would have done with the Toonami audience. While it was on the generic side, I could see kids gravitating towards it, since there was still a limited line of anime coming to us at the time, so we had less to compare it to. Either way, with the major success of the Adult Swim action block, Pilot Candidate being a dud in the ratings of that initial lineup didn't matter much in the end for the ultimate rise of the block. Number 9, Moribito, Guardian of the Spirit. So when it comes to Forgotten, this might be the most forgotten series on the list based on when it was broadcast. You ever just look at a series' history and think it was set up for failure? Moribito was sent out to die in the ratings by Adult Swim. I don't think that's a reflection of the show's quality, but they were cynical about it from the start. When they were advertising it was coming to the lineup, they didn't really say if it was good or bad. The ad started out like, "Yup, this show's next week, I guess," and then they said that they were expecting it to get poor ratings and to be pirated, which is technically a joke, but I felt like they were saying that with expectations, acting as if they were airing it out of obligation. Interestingly, in the promo, they called it by its Japanese name, Seirei no Moribito, but the series went by the English name Moribito Guardian of the Spirit when it aired.
That's such a nonsense title. Moribito directly translates to Guardian. This fall, adventure and excitement has a new name. Guardian. Guardian of the Spirit. If I recall, they were originally going to use the Japanese name before they changed it. I guess they're doing the Demon Slayer thing.
Moribito! I watched some of that show. I mean, watched it 10 plus years ago and probably out of order at, 12 in the morning when I was high. No, I wasn't high. I'm old now.
The series follows a Spearmaster mercenary named Balsa, and after rescuing the young Prince Chowgum from drowning, she is, somewhat forcibly, hired to be his bodyguard, as he is under constant threat of assassination due to the fear of him being possessed by a demon.
And then Balsa teaches Chowgum how to be a sword wielder, and he's like, I've never even washed floors. And she's teaching him how to use a sword? What? But yeah, then she teaches him how to be self-sufficient. And he teaches her how to be a good, caring person. Not that he knows how to be a good, caring person, but he teaches her how to care for another person because all she knows how to do is kill people for money.
This enables the series to show us some great fight scenes and set pieces, along with the emotional strain it has on the prince to be separated from his family. Some of the episodes drag a bit, but I do appreciate that they show us the ambiance of the situations. Though allegedly, the series was only meant to be about half the length, but 26 episodes were ordered, so I can't help but but notice when episodes get a bit fillery with backstories and such, knowing that information. Still, the fight scenes make up for anything that drags.
So I remember two things about Moribito. One, I don't remember anything about it. And two, it had one of Kira Buckland's earliest anime roles.
Regardless of the plot, going back to the scheduling, oh boy, yeah, that was likely a major factor for why it ultimately tanked. The first 3 episodes aired at the respectable 1:30 a.m. time slot on Saturday nights, but after that, new episodes were moved to 5:30 a.m., which is the last possible time slot for Adult Swim when they're usually just getting shows out of the way. They stopped showing it at episode 10 in October 2008, with 16 episodes unaired, reran the first 10 episodes, and then took it off the schedule entirely until August 2009, nearly a year later. They aired the rest of the episodes anywhere from 1:30 to 2:30 a.m. on a weekly basis when it returned, and finally, it was done. There were rumors on why there was such a delay, but the real reason was Bandai asked Adult Swim to air this for exposure, and they did. There was no personal interest by the staff, so they were just airing it to go with an agreement. I think that's a fine reason. Bandai gave Adult Swim access to some excellent anime over the years, so they were doing them a solid in return. Still doesn't exactly explain why there was a delay, but I'm assuming it had to do with maximizing the Adult Swim schedule, but still following the agreement. I learned about this show after it ended on Adult Swim, but if I was watching it actively, the delay would have driven me crazy. So there's Moribito for ya. Average plot, but interesting broadcast history. Number 8, Kekkaishi. Kekkaishi was just kinda there for Adult Swim. The anime was created in 2006, but it didn't premiere on the block until May 2010. Between the new episodes of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and reruns of Bleach, Kekkaishi stuck, airing weekly for a year until the end of its run, but it didn't quite have that shonen popularity power that other shows on the schedule had. The series was about the Kekkaishi, the job title of the main characters who are demon hunters in the modern day, and the protagonist, Yoshimori, gets into trouble capturing those demons in weekly adventures. He's the chosen one of his lineage, but doesn't want to have this serious job, so he's a goof and a rebel who's looked down upon by his family. He also enjoys baking, because his friend who was injured always wanted a cake tower, which is a neat quirk to him, but otherwise, it felt like standard shonen stuff, trending to get better, tragic backstories for the villains, teenage protagonist. It's a love 'em or hate 'em scenario, where you either vibe with a Villain of the Week series that has some extended storylines, or you've seen it a dozen times and just watch the other big names on the lineup instead.
I liked it because it reminded me of older anime, and I liked the family of demon hunters and how they were just regular people in the daytime, and then at night they would go out demon hunting, and how they were all the different yokais.
I feel this was in a gray area time of Adult Swim anime, where it was after the major boom of new and obscure titles from the mid-2000s, but before the nostalgic wave of Adult Swim Toonami in 2012 that re-sparked interest in new titles being shown. Kekkaishi just kind of existed. Still, Adult Swim treated it with the same care as other new series in its advertising, at least when it was premiering. They had a joke about how hard it would be to find without them putting it on the TV for ya, and then they gave us their rating, putting it at a 7 on a scale of Pokemon to Cowboy Bebop. And I know that's just a joke that enabled them to talk about standards and practices, and then do some generation gap jokes about Pokemon, and then an uncalled for Digimon diss, like come on, it was 2010, that rivalry was done. But was the 7 rating a joke about how it's a few notches down from Cowboy Bebop in terms of quality, or was it meant to be commentary about the series' tone, where it's semi-mature, but not at the level of storytelling as Bebop? I don't know. As mentioned, I may be looking too much into a random joke from an Adult Swim bumper, but Kekkaishi was a victim of coming too late to the party. Maybe if it was around during that sweet spot of 2004 to 2007, it would have been at home. But as it goes now, it was just another shonen that ran its course and was replaced with some other anime once it ran out of episodes. Number 7, Reign the Conqueror. I love the look of this anime, but the plot just feels like it happens to give the characters excuses to do things with their weird anatomy and such, and that's not a bad thing. I actually didn't even realize this was anime back in the day due to the character designs. Some may think these characters look like they're straight out of Aeon Flux, and that's cause it's the same character designer, Peter Chung. However, while Aeon Flux was produced in the US for MTV, Reign was produced by the anime studio Madhouse, famous for Ninja Scroll, Black Lagoon, Trigun, Pokemon, and many more anime. Still, they kept the distinct style of Peter Chung, where I thought this was another MTV cartoon that got lost on Adult Swim, so kudos to Madhouse for making something that truly looked different from the rest of the anime at the time. That being said, Chung was only listed as the character designer, so the source material and writing were handled by different teams, while Aeon Flux had his full creative control. The anime follows the story of Alexander the Great, expanding his empire in ancient Greece, if ancient Greece was steampunk and all the monstrosities from the mythos were actually robots. What works about all the challenges Alexander has to go through is he's a pretty unfazed protagonist, as in, he's always calm about the situation. He stares in the face of any scary demon guys or generals with hundreds of troops and is like, I know how to win this.
He is the most boring, but it's okay because he has really, really nice hair and a great butt and a hot boyfriend who serenades him in the bath.
It's cool to see how he speaks with actions rather than words, and oh boy do actions go far in this show. Fitting the Aeon Flux style, characters have absurd body proportions where they're almost liquid, and the outfits make no sense. There are straps, there are codpieces, and the rest of the clothing is optional. This armor was designed to expose any area of the body that's supposed to be protected from an attack. Some of the plot lines of this show seem like they're trying to be serious, but I also feel high levels of camp, since look at these designs, there has to be some self-awareness. Aristotle is creating a cyborg. The series initially aired on Adult Swim Monday through Thursdays at midnight starting in February 2003, and once the series finished its run, it got reruns on and off for the rest of the year, but never appeared past 2003, so either they lost the broadcasting rights or it just wasn't popular. Maybe both. It was a weird series to run in the first place, since it contained a lot of artistic nudity and visceral violence, so censorship had to be in place for standards and practices.
No, it's censored artistic naked. You can show you just can't show Can I say
I'm not sure. Maybe do an alternate take.
It would have to censor a lot. There's nips out the wazoo here.
I don't recall how they cut parts of it back in the day, but you can only find it uncensored now, so I can only assume. There are some scenes you get to and you're like, that probably wasn't allowed. The dub was also strange, since it was originally dubbed by Jack Fletcher's studio, known for various Miyazaki movie dubs and many anime OVA dubs like Tenchi Muyo. However, another dub was created by the time it was ready to air on Adult Swim, but the Fletcher dub still had the rights to the first 4 episodes, so once you get to episode 5, nearly all the voices changed to the second dub, meaning besides an art style that people might have found jarring, they also had to deal with the cast changing 5 episodes into this 13-episode series. On one hand, I think the series is worth a shot due to its unique art style, but in the end, it really just makes me want to rewatch Aeon Flux instead. Number 6, Android Kakaider the Animation. This one is unique since part of it was an OVA in Japan, which is a series that goes directly to video or DVD and is not initially broadcast on TV. It was actually 2 series. First was Android Kakaider the Animation, which ran for 13 episodes in Japan, and then it had its OVA called Kakaider 01, which followed up the events of the series and was released in Japan about a year after the series ended. There was also a second OVA, but that never got brought over to Adult Swim. Android Kakaider was a manga from the 70s by Shotaro Ishinomori, a legendary manga writer who created various other major series in the tokusatsu realm, i.e. Kamen Rider and Super Sentai, and notable for this animation, Cyborg 009, since I immediately recognized the character designs of the Kakaider anime being similar to 009 when I first saw it in the mid-2000s. With Kakaider's live-action series from the 70s being a pioneer for the tokusatsu genre, the anime had big shoes to fill. Overall, it's okay. I enjoyed the visuals of it, but the plot dragged during some of the more dramatic parts. However, I appreciate what it was trying to do.
This show had a really cool art style. It was a much older style, not really in line with 90s or early 2000s anime, but I like the way a lot of older anime looks, so that's really cool in my book. I'm not really familiar with the older Kakaider series, but from what I understand, this show was much darker in tone. It's one of those cool Isaac Asimov Asimov-inspired robot stories. I wish more people knew about it.
The robot Kikaider, aka Jiro, escapes from the lab he was made in after his creator goes missing following an attack from mysterious strangers. Jiro works with the doctor's kids on how to transform and utilize his android form, and we get robot villains of the week involving the organization that tried to destroy his creator's work. In addition, there's a recurring plotline that there are ways Kikaider can turn against humans, and someone is trying to overwrite his programming so he can harm people instead. He can also play the guitar, which is wholesome.
I like Kikaider. He's sad. Was he ever trapped in the snow? Is there a snowy episode? I feel like he was in snow once. No, just me? Okay.
The series ran on Adult Swim Monday through Thursdays in June 2003, with it being short enough where it finished up that month. As soon as the series ended, all 4 of the OVA episodes aired a week after. Then it got reruns until Cartoon Network lost the airing rights later in 2003. But considering it was only 16 episodes overall, I'm not sure how much longer they would have continuously reran it, since it's a mixed bag if Adult Swim reruns the shorter series over a longer period of time. Also, 1 episode wasn't even aired on Adult Swim. From the 13-episode series, episode 8 was omitted, but it was just a recap episode with no new material, so they were doing us a favor by not wasting our time with it. Plus, the series aired 4 days a week on Adult Swim, so having 12 episodes instead of 13 gave you an even distribution of episodes per week. The advertising of the series was pretty standard for Adult Swim. You had the serious voiceover in its intro ad, and it got fun bumpers. Regardless of how well it did in the ratings for the network, it had a good hook of over-the-top action mixed with an art style we didn't see too often in the 2000s. Number 5. Super Milk-chan. Super Milk-chan felt like it was tailor-made for Adult Swim. It was a series of shorts in Japan in 1998 about a girl named Milk-chan who was called to save the day by the president from generally mundane or absurd things. Anywhere from swords possessing people, to wanting to see an iguana eat a bug, to having to disguise herself as a middle-aged man to confront a gang. She has a robot maid and a slug pet who join her as straight men to give her someone to bounce crazy ideas off of. It's true absurdism where the plots aren't worth describing. A couple years after these shorts, she got a season of full-length episodes in 2000. These episodes followed the absurdism and got even wackier, adding in Dr. Eyepatch, who talks like a Courage the Cowardly Dog villain and gives her some new robot every episode, like a toilet that makes mochi. Sometimes they go and help the president, like finding a missing baby, and sometimes Milk-chan ignores him, like when he accidentally launches a missile and Milk declares the day saved when it finally lands with no one getting hurt except the president after she was distracted for a full episode. The big appeal is the animation using mixed styles, ranging from the main character's simplistic style to more realistically drawn people, to modern anime designs for the time, to live action, to anything in between. The plots were forgettable, mainly being vehicles for wacky animation, since Milk would disregard the story half the time. Adult Swim got a hold of the series in November 2004 and premiered episodes into early 2005. After finishing the series, Adult Swim then showed the segments from 1998 bundled together to fill half-hour segments, calling them the vintage episodes. Notably, it didn't air with other anime on Saturday nights. Instead, it aired Sunday nights, or technically Monday morning since they were on at 12:30 a.m., alongside Adult Swim originals like Aqua Teen Hunger Force. After it finished its initial Adult Swim run, it reran until 2006, sometimes alongside the anime, sometimes as a lone wolf on another night, and I vaguely remember it being in super late night slots, like 4 a.m. when you were staying up late just cause it was the weekend. It felt like a holy grail when I could catch it, since I missed its initial run, but the ads made it look so interesting to me at the time since I loved OMG random humor. The fact that it reran for over a year with just 14 episodes is a testament to how well it worked with how much Adult Swim liked nonsensical humor with unique animation.
I was surprised to learn that this was a Japanese cartoon because it feels like one of those shows that William Street cobbles together in order to pull a fast one on their audience. Those William Street guys, they're a sneaky bunch.
It felt like Perfect Hair Forever, or those early episodes of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, where Milk and the Aqua Teens were technically heroes, but only so we have a setup of how they can get from point A to point B to meet some random character. The pacing of Milk-chan could also drag sometimes, with dialogue going back and forth forth a bit too much, but sometimes it had that chill 12-ounce mouse vibe, so I'm mixed. I'm also not sure how old Milk is supposed to be. She looks and kind of acts like a child, but she lives in an apartment with roommates and has a landlord. Overall, Milk-chan was a product of its time, where I feel it's been surpassed by similar anime with this humor style and animation, like Panty and Stocking or Pop Team Epic, so I wouldn't recommend it over those anime, but I kinda recommend it if you like when a series mixes up animation styles. It's really good at pulling the rug from under ya with its random art style alterations. Milk is also a likable character, where she's clueless to the world around her and just wants some fun kid thing instead, like mochi or TV. She doesn't mean to ignore all these terrifying situations for other people, she just cares about other things more. A final note, ADV, the dubbing studio, did a second Americanized dub as they call it, where they added in more American pop culture references to go with the theme of the show and changed up some of the dialogue that still was in the spirit of the original. I'm mixed on it, since I like that they pick up the pace of the dialogue more and some plot points feel more cohesive, but the jokes can feel try-hard at times, where they go for a reference that's outdated now. They also replaced the live-action segments with small storylines using the dubbing team in live-action, which is charming. I feel like you never see this nowadays, and it makes you feel like the team had a lot of fun with this anime. At the end of the day, if you want to see the series as it was on Adult Swim, watch the original English dub, and then maybe check out this second English dub. Number 4, Blue Gender. Blue Gender is a very depressing show. It lures you in with the promise of mech battles against giant alien bug mutants, and it delivers on that, but its plot is full of drama and sci-fi horror. The main character, Yuji, has a disease with B cells, which are cells that cause the mind to get bloodlust and carry out the mission of the bug mutants, known as the Blue. He was cryogenically frozen in hopes there'd be a cure, but he was awoken early in the future because the military found ways to turn humans with B cells into super soldiers for their mechs. However, the more Yuji fights, the more likely he is to become more blue than human, so he works with the other protagonist Marlene, who's a trained soldier watching this all unfold, and has her stay by his side to keep his humanity. There's no jovial power of anime to this. She's chosen by Yuji because she was the most moral of the military, and Yuji is constantly fighting off his blue side, while still feeding into it when fighting against the aliens. And the directors of the forces mainly care about the alien body count, so only Marlene truly cares about him as a person. As mentioned, people infected with B cells carry out the Blue's mission, which is to kill off humanity, so other major characters turn out to be sleeper agents for the Blue, and then things get tense or downright gory, where sleepers bring Blue into the base and kill off a bunch of throwaway characters. Allegedly, this dub was meant for Toonami, so the Adult Swim version was edited to remove mostly blood, violence, and nudity, but even after that, it couldn't work during daytime hours, so it was aired on Adult Swim instead. Not sure how much censorship was dialed back compared to the planned Toonami version, but I don't know how they ever thought this would work on old Toonami. The major violence seems too excessive to edit easily. With it being a somewhat unplanned Adult Swim show, it didn't seem to get that much advertising. It got its main overview ad, a couple of nice bumpers, and then it was on Monday through Thursday at 12:30 a.m. starting in August 2003, so they didn't even savor the episodes for weekly airing. Once it finished its run, it got one full rerun cycle, but never made it out of 2003 for any more reruns. Perhaps this wasn't the type of anime that benefits from being run daily, or maybe it just couldn't find an audience in its short window of existence. However, with it being unique compared to other Adult Swim anime at the time, I'm interested to know the major reason it didn't do so hot. It was even run right after Fooly Cooly when it was new, so it's not like everything from that time went forgotten for Adult Swim. The name was definitely confusing though. Blue I get since those were the villains, but I don't know where gender came from in the title. Maybe it's one of those wordplay scenarios that doesn't translate well.
I could never get the name of the show right. Blue Gender, Blue Gender, Goose and the Gander. This is one of those early non-Dragon Ball Funimation projects. It came out after Yu Yu Hakusho and predated Fullmetal Alchemist by about a year. So this was right about at that time when when Funimation was becoming a powerhouse. The content was pretty shocking. They had to do a few tricky edits to barely get that TVMA rating.
Yes, this is something that I've always wanted to watch, but have never actually watched. I think I may have this DVD. I'm pretty sure I have this DVD, actually, but I've never seen it, because I used to get it confused with Blue Sub number 6, which I also have, and I have seen multiple times. Also on Toonami.
But why didn't you watch the Blue Gender DVD that you purchased?
I do have another one that's blue. I don't think it's blue in the title, but I think it's blue on the cover.
Did you just buy blue anime DVDs in hopes they were related to Blue Sub number 6?
No.
Well, I think you'd like the main characters of this one.
They're holding hands. Look at that.
And they have unspecified hot beverage.
I love hot beverage.
Also aliens.
Who the hell is that? I need to watch this.
Seems like it was just a wrong place at the wrong time situation. Adult Swim gave it a shot, but perhaps it's one of those anime that's best enjoyed without the limitations of TV standards and practices. Number 3, Scried. Or is it Escried? Escried? This anime. Scried was a series that backed up its battles with well-written storylines. It involves class warfare with an event called the Great Uprising. It divided Tokyo into 2 areas, the Lost Ground and the Mainland. The Mainland was the high-class area, and the Lost Ground is the outskirts, where people were affected by the uprising and developed powers called the Altar, giving them the ability to create supernatural weapons. However, the Mainland has their own force of altars to maintain order and prevent the Lost Ground from rebelling in any way, called Holy. And I guess the way they use their powers are related to the Scried name. I don't entirely know where the anime title came from still.
From the jumpstart, it's a very strange name. I didn't know what scrying was back then. Why didn't they just call it channeling? Or if you really want to go there, why don't they just call it pseudoscience? That's what it is.
I've seen a part of that. I don't remember what it's about. I also have postcards from this show from an anime magazine.
What magazine?
I don't remember. I just remember the 2 main characters who were in like this with their weird arms.
The story follows an alter named Kazuma, who's a mercenary for hire who has no allegiance. He just uses his power to make some extra bucks. Gives me Outlaw Star vibes. If all he can do is farm, he'll farm. But because that wouldn't make for a good episode, his crew tends to land him a job that gives him a dude to fight or an excuse to use his power, being Shell Bullet, turning his arm bionic, where he gets 3 strong punches. And they are really cool looking punches. They're worth the protagonist powers. Among his fights, he meets his main rival, a different alter named Ryuko, who's a part of Holy. He feels his job is to maintain order after seeing his mother and dog killed by an alter in the past, so he wants justice to be brought for his past hardships. And yeah, I'm down for that motivation, respecting the family. He's got snake extensions with his powers. The rivalry between these two is great, since even though Ryuko is technically fighting the protagonist, he has pure motivations, which opens up new avenues for them to work together and be torn apart. Scried was big in Japan when it premiered in 2001, but it took a while to get to the US. Adult Swim aired it around 4 years later, starting at the end of May 2005, and after it finished its run, it reran a couple of times at the end of 2005 and into 2006, but didn't appear after that. Some anime from this time got rerun cycles into 2007 and later, but with this one disappearing, I got the vibe it didn't do as well with ratings as other anime on the block. Otherwise, Adult Swim would have sprinkled it in schedules a bit more.
I remember the show never really getting much in terms of advertising. One of the very few commercials I saw for it after the fact, there's just some guys fighting, a bunch of bright colors. It's all instrumental music. There's no words. There's no narration that's like, this is Scryed, and he fights bad guys with scrying powers. So you don't know what the show is about. When I first saw an episode, I think it was the 2nd episode, I was expecting Inuyasha. And then this came on, and I'm like, what's this? Where's the dog? So I mostly remember the show as just being kind of there to fill up 30 minutes.
I'd at least say they tried to use its ad to build hype with a quick highlight reel of a bunch of powers, so they drag you in with the promise of cool fights, and hopefully you'd stay for the cast of characters. Number 2, Witch Hunter Robin. Witch Hunter Robin felt like it was on Adult Swim for longer than it actually was. Something about this series stuck out to me. It was about a team of supernatural hunters trying to solve mysteries and potentially fighting against various creatures on a weekly basis, all with their own powers or set of skills. And their newest recruit is the main character, Robin, but her power might clash with the organization, since Witch Hunter Robin is a witch, bum bum bum! More specifically, she's a craft user, as in witchcraft, where she can create fire with her mind.
She lights stuff on fire and she looks at them, but her eyesight's really not good, so she can't focus on stuff, so she mislights stuff on fire. So then she has to get glasses so that she can actually see the stuff that she lights on fire. Like the Cheetos! Are we also going to talk about Trinity Blood? So that's a vampire fighting vampires.
Well, it's not number 1, so I guess no. Maybe I don't think it's forgotten enough.
Oh, do other people know about that besides me? I really don't talk to other anime fans, so I live in a bubble.
Anyway, Witch Hunter Robin, neat show, right?
Oh, it's been a while, but I do like her. She's pretty cool. This was like a science fantasy anime cop show. The format was part Monster of the Week, part long-term story arc. So, in a way, it was very similar to Standalone Complex.
The ongoing storyline is the lead guy, Amon, is told to look over Robin to see if her witchcraft is a threat like any other supernatural encounter. So there's this underlying fear of both him and Robin that her witch gene will awaken and turn on everyone.
So it's a little bit of a tenuous relationship. Strenuous? Tenuous? I don't know if that's a word.
What I love about this series, and what probably made it pop out to me more, is it represents the time period it came out in, being the early 2000s. It's all about that goth punk aesthetic. The shading is dreary, the characters dress in dark colors, and everyone has an overcoat. The series has that edge to it, and I'm all for it. It's not trying to be your typical anime. It's funny how much it looks like all the clothes were drenched in black dye. Just think of your favorite nu metal band, and this anime probably has a similar vibe to them. As for its airing on Adult Swim, it started in February 2004, and was another anime that was aired daily Monday through Thursdays at midnight. Once again, I would have liked to see this one on Saturday night's block on a weekly basis, but at least we got a lot of it at once. After that, it saw reruns fairly often throughout the year, even getting aired on April Fool's Day in 2004, so we got rare imagery of the characters with silly mustaches drawn over them, which was the prank for the night on all shows.
The first episode had a lot of exposition, and it's kind of boring. This show was a little convoluted in some places, but it was pretty smart and mature for what it was. It had really nice color choices and a great dub cast. This is around the time I really started to notice Kari Walgren's range. This is another one of those 26 episode shows that, generally of quality, it just kind of ran its course.
Once the year was over, the broadcasting rights allegedly ran out, so it technically didn't go away due to low popularity or anything like that. But who knows how much longer it would have been reran if it was still around, since it was on the network for about a year with no new seasons planned. Still, we loved this series, and I'm glad for the year it was on. Adult Swim hyped it up with the edge it deserved. For number 1, I didn't know if I wanted to go with the most obscure of the bunch or the best of the lesser discussed anime, so I ultimately went with the latter and decided to talk about the best show on this list, even if I think it might not be at the level of forgotten as other shows we discussed. Number 1, Paranoia Agent. Paranoia Agent is an anime that sticks out strongly in my memory. I almost want to say it's more iconic than forgotten, but being only 13 episodes long, it didn't get to rerun as much as longer series, so it ultimately had less chances for exposure. Still, Adult Swim picked an excellent anime to show us in the middle of the night. Rather than being an action or comedy, it's a psychological horror. A cartoonist named Tsukiko is under stress from work to create a new character that has the success of her previous hit, Moromi, who has all sorts of merchandise and shows and other things, but is bound to fail eventually. When breaking down mentally on her way home from work one night, she's attacked by a kid with a bat. When the detectives try to get information from her, she remembers nothing about his appearance, so the mystery is on to find this kid that they call Shonen Bat, or Bat Boy, or Little Slugger in the dub.
She dropped her Moromi for drawings and pencil cases. She drew a wombat beaver.
Hey wait, you're a sleepy artist. You could be Tsukiko.
I'm an overworked, underpaid salaryman.
All the while, other people who are also having doubts about their own failures encounter this kid, and Tsukiko is still being interrogated throughout some episodes. Part of the mystery was if Bat Boy was real, since anyone who encountered him was under stress already or had some internal issues going on, so there was no evidence. Then when he is supposedly caught midway through the series, it's not the guy responsible for all the attacks, so the mystery goes on. Why is he a normal kid with a bat on skates for some, but an adult for others, or a demon who can regenerate? While it's somewhat clear that Bat Boy's a metaphor regarding people's fear of failure and uncertainty, it's still ambiguous of how this kid gets into so many people's minds, and that's the intrigue of the series, to find out why and how he exists, along with seeing how different people react to being in this scenario. These encounters are best experienced watching rather than me explaining, so I'll let most of them speak for themselves, but probably my favorite story is about the wife of one of the detectives. She was terminally ill and felt guilt that her husband was working extra to support her when she was unable to help in return. Lil Slugger visits her and brings up thoughts of dread, like making her think that her husband was working extra to get away from her, but she discounts that as an irrational thought, and any time he tries to put thoughts of doubt or fear in her head, where he grows to indicate the overbearing thoughts, she laughs him off and tells him that the human spirit can overcome such emotions, causing him to either go back to his normal size or just go away entirely. The series is full of cerebral moments like this, along with dark humor to balance out the tone, like the people who wanted Slugger to kill them, but ended up scaring him off since they were too enthusiastic for him, or when he was killing off the animators, Moromi has an interlude about how the animation industry works. This was a perfect show to have on in the middle of the night to give you the creeps, since it had all this underlying fear behind its plotline. It premiered in Japan in 2004, and Adult Swim picked it up about a year later in May 2005. It started in the midnight time slot on Saturdays, and slipped over to 1 a.m. during its initial run. After that, it was a fixture of rerun cycles for a few years, generally being rotated in and out with other short-run anime. It was only 13 episodes long, so the full series got reruns somewhat often to my recollection, but it gave people more chances to catch it. I remember later rerun cycles had it on around 3 a.m., which made it a lot scarier, especially with the episodes where characters hallucinate. Reruns stopped in 2007, but that wouldn't be the last time it was on Adult Swim. In 2020, Toonami, now on Adult Swim, added it to their lineup for a cycle, just cause they liked it, and maybe to have a whole new audience be exposed to it. They even referred to episode previews as the next new episode in the bumpers, despite it being on the network 15 years ago, but I suppose you could consider them sorta new since they were now in widescreen HD. It shows how timeless this art style is, since it fit in right alongside the other recent anime on the block at the time. They also gave extra respect to the creator in the ads, calling it Satoshi Kon's classic. For these reasons, it feels weird to call it forgotten, but compared to longer shows on the block and its overall hiatus from the network until 2020, it definitely could fly under the radar of Adult Swim anime, which is why we wanted to honor it as the best of the potentially forgotten bunch. Now, what did you think? Were all these anime out of your minds but in your hearts, or were some of them always in the forefront of your memory? What are some of your favorite Adult Swim anime that go under the radar, whether we discussed them or not? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next video.